Right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And I see we have a wonderful group from the schools. That's terrific. Thanks, boys and girls, young men, young women. It's very relevant that you came today because our guest is well known for her work in promoting chess in schools. Okay, so the formal introduction. It's my enormous pleasure today to welcome to KAUST and to the stage Susan Polgar. The Polgar family of three sisters is the most famous chess family in the world. And I remember when Susan Polgar burst on the chess scene as a phenomenon. She's a former child prodigy and world chess champion. In fact, she won the world championship 4 times and is the first woman to be awarded the title of Grandmaster, which is the highest title you can get in chess. She has won 10 medals for her native country, Hungary, and the United States of America, where she lives now, playing in the World Chess Team Championship. She has founded several foundations, one for promoting chess in schools, and she currently lives in Missouri, USA, and she and her husband, Paul, coach the Webster University chess team, which has won 7 times in a row and is the top-ranked collegiate team in the United States of America. So in her talk today, Susan will be talking about, I hope, touch on her remarkable life and the use of chess as an educational tool. But most important to our theme is chess as a model for human intelligence versus machine. So I think without further ado, please, Susan, if you can come to the stage.
Thank you so much.
Such a pleasure.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my great pleasure to be here with you this afternoon and share my story, share how through chess and computers my life was changed throughout the last few decades. So let's see if this works. Yes, it does. Wonderful. Okay, so you can see the main theme of my talk presentation today, how artificial intelligence, how computers turned the chess world upside down. As you know, it's not only the chess world, it's our world, period. Well, many of you don't remember, but some of you may remember, some 20, 30 years ago, there was no such a thing as internet or cell phones or things like that, at least not for the average person. And look at today, we can hardly live without our cell phones or Googling something and so on and so on. But it's the same in our chess community. I truly remember the days when we were traveling with suitcases of chess books to a chess tournament in order to being able to get the information we may need in preparation for a chess game. How things changed. Now all I need to do is take my laptop and it has thousands and thousands of times more information than those books had at the time. But we'll get to that part in a little bit later in the presentation. So I started playing chess when I was just 4 years old, and it was kind of unusual at the time that a 4-year-old, especially a 4-year-old girl, would play chess, because chess has been, for many centuries, I guess, perceived as a man's game. And to some degree, unfortunately, it still is today. But as you'll hear a little bit about it, I dedicated most of my life pretty much changing that stigma that chess is for men only. Chess is for everyone. And that's the beautiful thing about the game of chess, that a 4-year-old can play, so can a 94-year-old, girls and boys alike. So that's one of the fantastic things about chess. You can play chess in a quiet room. You can play chess even in a swimming pool like we do in Hungary. It's pretty common. People play in a pool. They have stone tables. You can play on an airplane, on a bus, in a car. You can even play blindfoldly, calling out the moves, if you reach a certain level, of course. So anyway, chess is as diverse as you can imagine it, and that's a great thing, that when I was little, I could play somebody elder and so on. So when I started playing, I faced a lot of surprised eyes, to say it nicely, when I first went to a chess club after I learned the game and I was playing with my father at home. And I entered at the chess club. First of all, I was the only girl. It was a room full of smoke at the time, and mostly middle-aged or elder men playing chess. And when I entered the club with my father was looking for me to get a chess game with somebody outside of home, outside of himself, to see where I stand, how I match up with the club players. And at first, everybody was laughing. What a joke this is. You want this little 4-year-old girl to play against us grown men? How ridiculous does that sound? Come on, be a man. If you want to play a game yourself, just say so. We'll give you a game. Don't use your little daughter to get a game of chess. And he was insisting, no, indeed it is for my daughter. She's the one that would like to get a game. Well, one thing after another, finally one of the men said, okay, let this little girl have a game already, just to make my father stop bugging everybody. So I got a game, and to people's surprise, I played reasonably well, definitely for a 4-year-old, and I even won some of the games. So, as they say, the rest is history. But it was a difficult start, and it was just the first sign of all the prejudice, all the discrimination I had to face in the coming years. Now, a few months after I learned the game, this is in one of the very beginning times when I just learned the game, I entered in the elementary school girls' championship of my native city, Budapest, which is the capital of Hungary in Eastern Europe. And that kind of changed my life, that one event. So as you can see, I was still 4 years old, and all my opponents were ranging mostly between 9 and 11-year-old. And so it was an issue in itself that they let me play, but they did finally. And I won the tournament by winning all 10 of the games that I had to play, 10 out of 10. So that kind of raised a lot of eyebrows, got a lot of attention within the chess circles, within the media. And of course, I thought, this is fun. And I continued playing and learning and having fun. Moving on, I played in clubs. I started taking some lessons and so on. And by the time I was 12 years old, I represented my country in the World Championship, in the Junior Championship. And I won my first world title when I was just 12 years old. And at that stage, I have to say that it was still, this is very early 1980s, it was still very unusual for girls to try to compete against men. And I had to face a lot of difficulties, many times even just to get invited or allowed to play in a tournament among men. But I already at that age also achieved the master title, the overall men's, if you want to call it, the master title. And that's when the challenges starting to hit, especially year 1986, when I had a fantastic year. By the age 15, I was the #1 ranked woman player in the world. And in 1986, I played the national championship of Hungary. And Hungary was a pretty dominant country in chess, especially back in the 1970s and 80s, when typically Hungary used to finish right behind the Soviet Union in 2nd or 3rd place in the chess Olympiads. So it was a pretty significant achievement. So I played in the national championship, and it was announced that the top 3 will qualify to represent Hungary in the World Championship cycle. So I was super excited. I worked really hard, and I did tie for 2nd, 3rd, so it doesn't matter if I finish 2nd or 3rd, I would qualify. So I was so happy. That's it. I'm #1 woman player in the world. I qualified now in the Men's World Championship cycle, the first woman ever to do so. And then came the unexpected, shocking news. When time came for me to play in the World Championship, my federation informed me that I cannot play because it is the Men's World Championship, and women are not allowed to participate. So that was kind of a setback, I would say. And coincidentally, in the same year, 1986, they made something unimaginable and ununderstandable, honestly, even up to this day. One of probably the worst decisions the World Chess Federation did. They gifted 100 free rating points, and that's like a lot. You know, usually you have to work really hard for years to gain 100 rating points at that level. And so they gave 100 free rating points to all women in the world except me, with the excuse that, well, she's playing against men, and it's easier to gain rating points against men, which is completely laughable, of course, and not true. Of course, that was a temporary setback, but nevertheless, these two issues that happened within a few months from one another was really discouraging. But nevertheless, I used it to motivate myself to work even harder, work on trying to change the rules, which was successful thanks to some chess federations like Australia and some others who were fighting against this injustice that women cannot play in the Men's World Championship. And in future cycles of the World Championship, they removed the name men's from the World Championship, Chess World Championship name, and today they call it the Chess World Championship or the Open Chess World Championship. And I was allowed to play as well as some other women in the future, like my sister. In 1991, it was a very significant year in my life, and I think for women's chess in general, in that I broke the gender barrier, becoming the first woman to earn the Grandmaster title. There were 2 other women before that who got awarded because they were women world champions, but didn't earn the title like men would have to. So I'm very proud that I managed to earn it the proper way and gain the title that way. I remember the days when I was growing up as a young girl, when I dreamed about achieving that feat, becoming a grandmaster in chess, which is the highest title. And people were looking at me like, next thing you want to walk on the moon or something. And they really thought it was impossible, and they thought I'm wasting my time, I'll be just set up for a disappointment. And I just didn't understand why that would be. After all, chess is not a physical activity where physical strength or speed or power may play a role, which admittedly men have an advantage in. But when it comes to chess, it's a mental activity. So by no means I could understand why would men be superior to women. And so I was very, very happy when that day arrived, that all the people who didn't believe that girls are equally capable in any intellectual, mental activity can do it, I did it. And to be honest, what was really kind of surprising and to some degree disappointing for me back growing up in my early teenage years, that it wasn't just the men that didn't believe or didn't encourage girls to try to be good chess players or as good as men, but it was also the women that didn't believe. They thought, it's not possible. So I was really pleased that I think, opened a whole new door for all women, girls coming after me. Today, it's not a question. Even though I was the first one in 1991, soon after my sister Judith followed, becoming a grandmaster, and today there are several dozen women who have achieved that feat. And of course, there are many others who are close by. And it's not a question anymore if women can be a grandmaster. So I think that this is really important. And I think it's important not just for chess. I think it's important for women all over the world, including here in Saudi Arabia, to believe that it doesn't matter what people say. If you work hard, if you have a dream, you can achieve it. And just because people say you cannot do it because you're a woman, yes, you can. It's a matter of working hard and being persevering and being patient. And that's one of the many things that chess teaches, to be patient, whether it's achieving a title or even during single game. You know, a single game can take 4, 6 or more hours of play. So it requires a lot of patience, and that's one of the things that chess definitely develops. This was one of the happy moments, winning my second and third world championships. This is the second one, so 1992. And just to kind of finish up the summary about my competitive career, I won 4 world championships, 10 Olympic medals, 5 of them gold. And I was the first person to win the chess Triple Crown, which means winning in classical time control, blitz, which means a game ends within 10 minutes, and the rapid, which means the game ends within an hour, 30 minutes for each side. Okay, so, and one more thing. I have also held the world record a few years back when I played 326 opponents in Florida, in one of the big malls there, and it lasted almost 17 hours. So that was kind of a special exhibition. We'll have a miniature version of that coming up here tomorrow. So if any of you are interested, please, I'd like to invite you, come by tomorrow. I believe it's at 2 p.m. Outside of the library in the Spine. That's where the exhibition I believe will be. And I'll be playing about 10 or 12 players simultaneously. So that won't take 17 hours, so don't get scared. Probably it will take within an hour, hour and a half. But I look forward to seeing you there. Okay, so let's move on to some other issues, and that's chess and computers and artificial intelligence. So chess is an easy game to learn, but it's a hard game to master. And it has pretty much infinite possibilities. And this little old story symbolically shows you that. There is this old story that you put 1 grain of wheat or rice, depending which story you read, but same idea, that you put 1 grain on the first square of the chessboard on A1, then you double it on B1, the second square, with 2 grains, then you put double that, 4, 8, 16. So by the time you reach the 5th square of the chessboard, and you keep doubling, right, on each square, you already have 31 grains. Think for just a second. What do you think? How many grains will it be by the time you fill up the entire chessboard by keep doubling it up each square, 64 squares. It's a really, really big number indeed. Yes, you're right. So that's the number. That's an astronomical number that you see quite on the bottom of the screen. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Okay? So it shows you how infinite things are on the chessboard. And even though chess has been used as one of the main platforms to develop artificial intelligence, ever since the 1930s, believe it or not, chess has been used as that platform. It's still far and far away to solving the game of chess, unlike checkers, which has been solved, but not chess. Chess is still very far away from being solved. This picture brings me back to my childhood memories. As I mentioned earlier, I was born and raised in Budapest, Hungary, in Eastern Europe. And Hungary used to be part of the Habsburg, Austro-Hungarian monarchy. And the Turk was the first perceived chess machine. And it was very in the 70s, when I was a little girl. My father used to tell me stories, and things weren't quite clear yet at the time what was the true story behind the Turk. As you can see, there is a model sitting in robes and a turban, and it was moving actually the chess pieces. So it was a mechanical instrument, and the doors were obviously closed. You couldn't see what's inside the box. And the Turk, the machine, was playing very good chess, beating most people that it was playing, including some famous statesmen such as Bonaparte and Napoleon or Benjamin Franklin. And people were wondering, how is this possible, right? This is happening now in the 18th century. So that's a long, long time ago. So even into the 20th century, when I was growing up, right, in the 70s, it was a mystery. So as it turned out, some famous chess masters used to sit in that empty part of the box. And it's still pretty impressive, to be honest. They had that mechanical and playing blindfoldly, I assume, and was somehow relaying the moves in a mechanical way to the Turks. So it was a pretty cool thing, but that was the first attempt, but it was kind of not what we consider computer chess today, obviously, because at the end of the day, it was the person who was thinking and through mechanical help was relaying the moves, but it wasn't the Turk thinking, it was a person thinking. So this was the first chess computer that I ever had, and this was in 1980. So it's called the Boris Diplomat, perhaps after Boris Spassky, when he was, of course, world famous after being world champion, and then he became more famous when he lost his title to the legendary Bobby Fischer in 1972. So this was the Boris Diplomat, and I have to say I was very amazed of the fact that a machine can play a legal game of chess. And that's about it, what it did. It played a legal game of chess, not a very high-level one. Even though I was only about 10 years old at the time, I could beat it very easily in every single game, even if I closed my eyes and played blindfoldly, just calling out the moves. Well, we came a long way since, I have to say. For those of you who play chess, this will mean more than who don't, but even those of you who don't play chess, it's pretty clear that the white side has a lot more pieces, right? And the black only has the king. So in the early days of computer chess, like Boris Diplomat, it was very materialistic, right? Each of the chess pieces are assigned a value that when people learn playing chess, they're being taught early on that the queen is worth 9 points, the rook is 5, the bishop or knight 3, the pawn 1 each. So therefore, when programmers were teaching the computer, that's what they taught the computer. So they assumed bishop is worth 3 points. Each of the pawns that you see on the side, on the right side of the screen, are worth 1 each. That's 5, that's 8 points. That's a tremendous advantage. White must be winning. Versus a human, an average club player, would know that this is a basic draw. There is no way for white to win in such a situation, despite the substantial material advantage. So that's just one very visual example to show that material is not everything in chess, of course, and in those early days, even basic things weren't correctly understood by the computers. There was even a computer back in the late 1980s, early 1990s that bared my family name, the Mephisto Polgar. And there were the chess robots, right? The robots that pretty impressively move literally the pieces like human would move. So I think these were combining the thinking process of the computer with the mechanical aspect of the actual moving part. But these things were shown in several movies, and it was very impressive visually. And now let me talk a little bit about how we use computers and technology in chess today, and how it completely revolutionized chess. I briefly mentioned in the beginning that we used to carry chess books, a suitcase load of it, in order to have the right information during a tournament. And today, just on our laptop, we can easily have, and every professional would have about 9 million chess game database. So there's a chess-based database called ChessBase that practically everybody uses, whether grandmasters or club players, or anybody who wants to see historic games, wants to improve their game. And of course, that's not easy. When you have 9 million games, you don't have the time to look at all 9 million games. But neither is there a need for it, right? When you have information, and everybody has that same information, that's when the human difference comes in, which of those games are important and why. So that's one part, the database, that we can analyze games by specific openings, by specific endgames, by looking at selecting the latest, let's say 20 games or 100 games of our upcoming opponent. So it really makes our life much more efficient in preparing. And then there is the Fritz, the Fritz was the first one, and today there is Stockfish, as you can see on the upper right-hand side, the engines. So there is the database sorting database software, which is ChessBase, and then there is the engine. There are the engines, different engines that analyze actually. And unlike Boris Diplomat that I talked about a little while ago, Stockfish and Fritz, they pretty much all play Grandmaster level. So that's a whole different approach by the programmers, that they don't strictly count material, they analyze a lot deeper and a lot more intelligently. And I know programmers of Fritz and ongoing, the through the, let's say, the 1990s and the beginning of 21st century, the programmers behind this software were trying to teach strategy, which is a lot less definable than material, right? Like having the pair of bishops or an open file, which are just strategic terms, but they're hard to define, quantify for a software. But yet they made an incredible improvement on those things. And that reached the phase, I think we're coming here, the race between man versus the machine. And that was a very interesting phase all throughout my lifetime, from the times when people were laughing about there ever being a real race because computers can never think like humans, right? Including Garry Kasparov, the legendary former world champion, who said, "Never ever in my lifetime will the computers defeat humans." While later he had to adjust that. First he said never ever, then he had to adjust it never in my life, in his lifetime, to the point where he actually was challenged by the machine. And the famous match he played first in 1996, which match he still won, but a year later, the famous match, 1997, when IBM's Deep Blue, that you can see on the left-hand side, has challenged him and kind of humiliated him, right, by defeating him. And all his announcements that never ever, never in my lifetime were out the window. He lost the match. Deep Blue defeated the best probably ever chess player, or one of the best ever chess players up to that time. And he didn't take it well. He was looking for an excuse. Can you imagine, of all things, he complained that the computer was cheating by using human help. So I thought that was kind of ironic, it was kind of funny. But I think at that point, when the computer defeated Garry Kasparov, it wasn't a question who wins this race. I actually challenged Deep Blue shortly after that match because I thought it's the last moment to have even a potential chance to have a chance against the machine. But they decided not to take a risk, not a chance, and they declined my challenge. Nevertheless, years later, and the picture on the right-hand side, you see at the Watson Center of IBM back in New York, we visited, and I played a friendly game against Deep Blue, which ended in a draw. And you can see that. Okay, so the next slide is talking about something related to this as well. So Bell Lab is very, very famous in the United States, and it's also very famous in chess because back from the 1980s all the way to year 2000, a very famous Professor Ken Thompson, who is also the inventor of the programming language Unix, and he was fascinated about solving the game of chess. So here he started with all positions, all possible imaginable chess positions with 3 pieces and 4. And by year, I think 2000 or so, he reached and he solved his computation, not him personally, but his programs, solved all possible chess positions with 5 pieces on the board. And I visited the Bell Lab, and Ken became a good friend of mine, and he was testing different things while I was in the lab. It was really, really a remarkable experience for me. And later, some other programmers around the world kept working on it, because 5 pieces, that's not that many of 32 that start out a chess game. So the big question among scientists still remains, can chess be solved? But as you remember, the little wheat grain story, right? How things multiply in complexity between 5 grains versus all 64 squares being filled with grains. It similarly expands, and we're very, very, very far from solving the game of chess. And as of right now, there is this famous Nalimov table-based or endgame base that they call. You can go online and you can put in any possible imaginable chess position with up to 6 pieces, like the one you see here on the screen, and it will tell you immediately, right? On the right-hand side of the screen, you see those letters and numbers. It tells you R, B8 to A8, which means R for rook, moving to the corner to A8. That's the only win, and it guarantees checkmate in 18 moves. Pretty remarkable, and it tells you number of other moves draw the game, and there are even 4 really bad moves that lose the game. So that's where the technology has been going in the past few decades, in trying to go from backwards, right? Solving everything from backwards, from all possible checkmate positions with only 3 pieces, working their way back. But technology so far, even though it started back in the 1980s, only got solving 6 pieces and some 7 pieces, but not all. So that's pretty remarkable. And that brings us to today. Some of you may have heard of DeepMind's AlphaZero. They made the news big time in 2015 when AlphaGo has defeated the top Go players in the world. Well, the chess world still didn't take much attention to it until very, very recently, when out of the blue, just a few weeks ago actually, we heard the shocking, shocking news that AlphaZero defeated our beloved Stockfish. As you've seen a few slides earlier, Stockfish is considered one of the very top chess engines that defeats all humans pretty much easily. And we use the chess engine to analyze with and to prepare with and come up with new ideas. We thought that's like, you know, the ultimate, pretty much. And all of a sudden, here comes AlphaZero, plays a 100-game match against Stockfish and defeats it 28 and no losses, and the rest were drawn. The Stockfish that we thought is the ultimate, that beats all humans, that doesn't even win a single game against AlphaZero. So that's pretty remarkable. And it uses a completely different approach than even Stockfish or Fritz and many others that used all similar, slightly different, but similar algorithms. AlphaZero, just as AlphaGo, uses machine learning. So unlike the other engines that I mentioned that are programmed by a person or team of programmers, it basically lets itself learn through its own games. So it's pretty incredible that it doesn't need or want any outside information of what's the value of this piece or that piece, or what's considered by humans good or bad. It's self-taught. So that's pretty, pretty remarkable, and I suggest that you read up on it a little bit if you're interested in technology and science, because it's a really new way of approaching artificial intelligence. And the results are just fascinating. And for those of you who play chess, I have to tell you that the games themselves were just stunning in the way that computers have been considered very materialistic. Unlike AlphaZero, that would give up a piece a night for something very long-term, very abstract, that's hard to comprehend for us humans. So it's really a very revolutionary way. And well, we are here to learn from AlphaZero, I think, in the future. There is a YouTube video that I could show, but I think we can talk about some other things more interesting. You can go and watch that if you just Google about AlphaZero. So I'll move on to some stats that you can see the specific stats. AlphaZero won 25 with the white pieces, 3 with the black pieces, which is also quite remarkable because in chess tournaments, generally there is a slight difference. Maybe white wins 55% versus black 45% of the decisive games. But as you can see, not for AlphaZero. AlphaZero won quite significantly more with the white pieces versus the black pieces, which normally doesn't show up in human chess as much. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about chess in education and what I do today. I have retired from competitive play a number of years ago. I founded the Susan Polgar Foundation in 2002 because I believe that chess can be a very efficient and beneficial tool for education, especially for elementary school, but also for all young people. Here are just some of the benefits of chess that can bring to young people and children. It develops analytical skills, which is most important in life, to assess a situation, first of all, without first making a decision or a move, right? Before we play a game of chess, we need to think. And that's one of the struggles a lot of children have, that they like to do things immediately and then, oops, and regret later. So having the analytical skill, the problem-solving skills, and the decision-making skills. So those are 3, I would say, probably most important skills. But there are more. There are a whole lot more. I think chess, I mentioned earlier, teaches you to be more patient, focus better. And focus is a really important thing that I always tell my students or my own children that focus on what you're doing. You can do many different things, but if you want to do something really well, you need to do one thing at a time. So focus on what you're doing. And in chess, I mentioned earlier, chess games can go on 4-6 hours a game or more sometimes. And it's enough to lose focus for a short few seconds and make a wrong decision, and all your good work, all your concentration can go down the drain by one bad move. And so it is in life. It's really important that when you do something that's important to you, you focus on it and don't get distracted. There has been research and statistics that children who take chess in school, they have improved test scores and better academic achievements. They have better verbal reasoning skills as well as they do better in math. In many cases, especially for minorities or other groups, have increased self-confidence, self-esteem. It improves, it develops memory skills. While chess is not a game of memorization, unlike some people think, chess is a game of creativity and problem solving. But nevertheless, of course, there are some things you need to memorize. Patience, already I mentioned earlier, understanding the consequences of actions taken. That's one of the hardest things to teach a young child, because many times you don't want to really show the consequences if you do things wrong. In chess, well, the worst that can happen, you may lose a game of chess. So that's a very safe environment to show the consequences of actions taken. And another very important thing that we constantly practice during a game of chess, and that's perceiving a situation from your opponent's point of view, from the other side's point of view. That's another common mistake, that people don't think enough from the other side. I have started a new phase in my life pretty much in 2007, although I have been teaching chess, opening my chess center in New York City in 1997. But it was kind of part-time, raising my young children at the time. And in 2007, I started getting involved in collegiate chess, and ever since, our teams have won the past 7 consecutive national championships in the United States and the past 6 Pan American championships consecutively. So I'm very proud of our students and of the methods as well that we developed. So currently I'm the director of the Susan Polgar Institute for Chess Excellence, as it's called in short, SPICE, at Webster University, that is ranked as the #1 collegiate program in the US as well as probably in the world. Here are some of the students that won. And many people ask me what are the secrets to success, to winning so many championships, which is pretty much unprecedented in any sport, 7 years consecutively. And of course it's complex, but it comes down first of all to motivating the students to have the passion, setting goals, and realistic goals at that. Of course, hard work is irreplaceable. It's the most important. Without that, nothing else in itself helps. Having the dedication, which comes with some sacrifices. And of course, along the way, setbacks are possible and unavoidable. And never give up when those happen. Learn from them. And as I like to say, it's not how many times you fail, it's how many times you stand up and start again and work even harder to achieve your goals. Thank you.
Well, that was awesome, Susan. Thank you very much. We'll just have some questions and answers, but I'd like to invite Susan's husband, Paul Truong, to join us on the stage. Paul? Paul himself is an exceptionally good chess player, as well as being very clever, because he married Susan. And the two of them run the Spice Institute and the Webster University chess program, which is something even that we imagine one day might come in Saudi Arabia, inter-university chess championships. Okay, so we'll take some questions from the floor. We have the bouncy.
Thank you very much for a nice talk. Where do you think the story with artificial intelligence goes? For example, can you imagine that different countries nowadays start to compete who will have built a best mind and later on use this best mind in finance, for example, defense, and so on?
I'm pretty confident that actually not just AlphaZero, but even back then IBM developed the chess artificial intelligence for other purposes as well beyond chess. So I very much believe it's possible. I don't have the inside information, so to say, but I'm pretty confident that is that direction it's going.
But let me add something else to what you said, because for an example, when Susan mentioned before that our program won 7 consecutive times, every coach in every university has the same software. They have the same database. They have all very talented students. What makes a difference is how you interpret the data. Because as I said, if you look on the screen, you see the computer shows you all the analysis. But you have to apply that into the human factors. Like for an example, we can sit maybe 20 meters away from 2 players. Without looking at the board, I can tell you who's winning, who's not winning, who's nervous, by the way they move, the way they hold a chess piece, the way they punch the clock. All these little things to show when the human factors come into play, like a certain time during the game, somebody gets very nervous, while somebody else holds their nerves much better. So those are the things that can never be changed, no matter how good the computers are.
Hello. Thanks
Yeah,
for the presentation. Just I have one question related to when basically AlphaZero got into the picture and won many games against that, like the old programs. Just I couldn't understand why, by changing the colors, like the black and the white, AlphaZero had to lose some of the games.
No, AlphaZero didn't lose any of the
but,
games. They just only won less games.
Exactly. So what's the difference between?
Well, to be honest, I'm not quite sure yet. It's still a mystery. It just happened a few weeks ago, and they only released 10 of the 100 games for whatever reason. So we're still looking forward to find out. I don't know if you have a different opinion.
Yeah, traditionally in chess, white scores more because white moves first. So that's one of the reasons why, even with the machine, whites win more. But what's even more remarkable about AlphaZero is that these software like Stockfish, Houdini, Fritz, they've been around for quite a bit, maybe about a decade or so. But what AlphaZero, what's so remarkable is that not only it's a brand new thing where the computer taught itself about chess, it did it in 4 days. So it taught itself in 4 days to beat something that had a team of programmers spending years doing this. So you can imagine what it would be. Let's say it would have more time to learn. But that's what it is, 4 days where it can achieve that kind of success.
Thanks.
What do you think will be the impact of all this, or has been the impact already, since it's been, I guess, 20 years since the Deep Blue one, on chess, in the public view of chess and interest in chess among young people? I can see it, possibly having a dampening effect where you can't dream of beating AlphaZero one day.
Well, I think actually a lot of people were afraid that this is the end of chess. I think it's the contrary. I think chess is more popular than ever before. There are over 700 million people who play chess world today. About half of those are children or young people. So I think actually I didn't even mention the fact that we have online chess today. That unlike in my childhood, when I was growing up, I'm sure many of you here today play online, and that's available 24/7. So actually the fact that computers are around, of course we gave up the race long ago, just like runners wouldn't race a Mercedes, right, or a car, because it doesn't make any sense anymore. The same way we utilize technology, we utilize the engines to improve or to practice, and I think chess becoming a whole lot more popular because of technology today.
Yeah, what many people don't realize is how popular chess is. Susan mentioned about 700 million people play chess. The most popular sports in the world is, of course, soccer, football. And they have over 200 international federations in terms of, member federation, different countries. Chess is actually number 2 with about 185 member nations. And you're talking about, you hear about the Winter Olympics and the Summer Olympics. Chess have our own Olympics with 180 countries competing, which is way bigger than even the Winter Olympics coming up in Korea. So, I mean, it's quite popular, and because of the technology, chess is moving into completely different directions. More and more schools are having chess in the school because of the impact it can do for children. And in fact, today, there are more than 40 countries around the world having chess as part of their curriculum. What they would learn, let's say, math or language or, other subjects, science, they would have chess. So it's becoming, very different than what it used to be, where people are trying to compete against it. Now they're using chess to help kids do a lot better in school.
Hello. My question is, did you ever have the feeling of giving up after losing a match, or giving up and being the first woman to ever play in a chess game or something?
Well, I may have had for 2 seconds, but that didn't last very long now. As I mentioned earlier, it's one of the most important secrets to success is to use any disappointment or loss to motivate you to learn from it and come back and show that you learn from it and do better.
Thank you.
We'll have to wrap up soon, but I think there's a woman that would, Henriette, isn't it? So I think, please.
I have a question. Will you be visiting the elementary school and give a chess clinic or something? Because unfortunately, here in the school, the program stopped. So
yeah,
we're a bit deprived.
I'd be glad to sometime. I don't know, I haven't been invited yet specifically, so okay, sure. If I will, I definitely would love to.
So did you remember the slide where Susan showed she held the world record for playing the largest number of people simultaneously? You remember that slide with the big row of chessboards? So tomorrow, 2 o'clock outside the library, Susan is going to play 10 people from the KAUST community. We're also hoping the president of the Saudi Chess Federation will join us. But we have 1 boy and 1 girl from the school. If I could would any of the school children and young men and women here like to ask a question? Because don't be shy. Chess in schools is a big thing. Would someone like to ask a question? Can we get the microphone to this young man?
There's one in the back. He has the microphone.
Oh, he's got the microphone. Okay, go ahead.
So it's been mentioned many times about how how artificial intelligence is looking to solve the game of chess. So can you please clarify what you mean on solving the game of chess, as well as do you believe that AlphaZero is the most advanced technology we have in the game of chess?
Well, basically there has been this approach for several decades now that if we can solve all positions with 3 pieces or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, eventually we'll move back to all 32 and all possible positions will be solved. And it has been, the theory always has been that the game should end in a draw. If both black and white pieces sides play correctly, the natural outcome of the game is a draw. Neither white or black should be winning. But AlphaZero just maybe put a small question mark in this in the recent weeks, and only time to tell how this will develop.
You mentioned about solving, as Susan mentioned before, we have right now a complete endgame table base where computers have solved any positions on the board with 6 pieces or less, and some 7 pieces. But chess have 32 pieces, so it's a long way, and I don't think that it's going to be solved anytime within my lifetime or our lifetime, maybe during your lifetime, but it's quite complicated. To go from 6 to 7 took a number of years, even with the current technology today. So to go from 7 to 8 may take another decade, and you can imagine to go to 32, it's quite complicated.
Chess is a wonderfully long game. We've got time. Just one more question from the schoolboy.
Okay. What's the most memorable game of chess you have played?
Oh, what a great question.
Well, fortunately, I have a number of them, but the first that comes to mind that I played in the Chess Olympiad, that I played against old rival of mine, Maya Chiburdanidze, and that's one of my all-time favorite games.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
thank you.
you very much for attending, and especially that last great
That's very
question.
nice.
And we now have a presentation from Murray Law to Susan, and I get to join in as well.
Thank you. That's lovely.
Okay, we get a photo? Or this side?